This episode of Bass Freaks is brought to you by the MXR Bass Compressor. The MXR Bass Compressor is a powerful bass comp that allows you to fine-tune your sound from subtle peak limiting to hard squash compression. It's a totally transparent comp to give you control over attack, release, ratio, input, and output. It also has an easy-to-use LED that allows you to meter your signal threshold on the fly. It's an essential piece of gear that no bass player should be without and is great for both live and studio applications. Go to jimdunlop.com and check out the MXR Bass Innovations Bass Compressor. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Dunlop Presents Bass Freaks. This is a place for all of us bass freaks to chat it up, gain a little insight and inspiration, and have some fun with some great bass players. I'm your host, Josh Paul, and today we welcome the very cool Michael League to the show. How are you, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. You are in Germany at the moment, taking the time to talk with us and hopefully inspire some people out there. How are you feeling?
Good. Tired.
Yeah.
I forgot what it was like to be on tour, but good. Yeah, it's all good.
How does it feel to be back out?
I mean, to be honest, it's kind of like a mixed bag. I never really, I've definitely done a lot of very, very intense touring, but after like a year and a half of not doing it, I think I kind of lost a lot of the muscles. So it's been kind of like whiplash getting back into it. But overall, it's been great. I mean, the band that I'm traveling with, Bocante, is awesome. You know, everybody's got a great attitude and is making the most of it. So overall, it's great. Just like forgot how intense it was.
I hear you, man. So I was watching something on YouTube with you where you were sort of discussing being off of tour for so long, and there was a beautiful piece that you had written. I don't remember the name of it, but it was inspired by being off. It was a piano piece, and the mood and the vibe that you created was so beautiful and cinematic, and I felt that in the moment. I just want to say kudos to that. It was
thank you.
I wish I remembered the name of the piece, but
I think it's called probably Right Where I Fall. It was the first single from my solo record. Awesome.
How did that come about?
I mean, I'd wanted to make a solo record for a long time, like for 10 years or something. And I kind of started planning it 5 years ago, but it just always got pushed to the back of the list just because there wasn't anyone counting on me to do it, right? So, but then when the pandemic hit, all my stuff got canceled and I was just kind of like stuck in my girlfriend's little apartment. And so I just figured like I had a MIDI controller and a computer. So I said, now's the time to write this. And, writing music during a pandemic, it's like impossible for that not to creep in. So I think a lot of the songs are maybe reflecting stuff that we were all going through during that time,
That's awesome. You were able to stay productive, and thank God for technology now.
You ain't kidding.
Being able to do that. So you obviously wear a lot of different hats as a bassist, band leader of Snarky Puppy, and composer, running a label and sessions and winning awards and producing. How are you breathing? How do you find time to breathe, man?
Well, I mean, I guess the most important thing is just having people around you that are trustworthy and that take care of stuff. I don't think anyone can do anything on their own, really. So, everyone that I work with, from the musicians to managers or booking agents or record label, people, or the festival that we have, it's like everyone's on top of their stuff and cares a lot about why we do what we do. I don't think anyone in my community looks at what we do as a business, really, or as something transactional. I think everybody in it for the high of experiencing art, and but also everybody takes care of their stuff. So I guess that's how I stay breathing, is because other people are doing a lot of the ugly stuff. The first 10 to 15 years, it wasn't necessarily that way. I was managing and booking and making, album covers on Illustrator and, doing everything at like 10%.
Right, got you.
I know you know about that, but yeah, I mean, I am finding that now, like, I think the pandemic was a bridge for me for sure, and that crossing that bridge, I'm feeling like, do I really need to do all this stuff? Should I really do all this stuff? Am I really happy you're doing all this stuff? I don't know. Right now, I guess you're catching me in a very, maybe a midlife crisis moment.
Well, I'll hold your hand, brother. We can get through it together.
There you go. There you go. We'll buy some cheap convertibles.
Yes. Some
$4,000 convertibles.
Yeah, maybe a 1987 Corvette might work.
With 3 wheels.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about the only one I could afford.
Me too. I'm with you. That's so great. So, let's talk a little bit about your history. Did you start off on bass?
No, I started out on guitar.
Okay.
And then I switched to bass when I was like 17 or so. I played guitar from like 14 to 17, and then I switched to bass because there was no bass player in my high school jazz band, so someone had to do it.
Yeah, man. That is such a common story with so many different people. It's crazy. Was there a bass player that you saw that inspired that change?
No.
Okay.
It was strictly because there were 3 guitar players in the band, and they needed a bass player. So, but I mean, I was a fan of bass players for sure. I was really into Bootsy Collins in high school. I mean, I still am really into Bootsy Collins. But
Me too.
Like John Paul Jones and Bootsy Collins were probably like my 2 main, my favorite bass players when I started playing, and Jocko. And, but then as time went on, obviously becoming an actual bass player, I got into a bunch of different people, and, but you know how that is. I mean, you just kind of go down the hole and discover new people. But yeah, when I first started, those were kind of like, I was learning Led Zeppelin and Parliament bass lines basically when I started.
Hell yeah. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite line?
What is and what should never be by Zeppelin. Probably my favorite Zeppelin bass line. My favorite Parliament bass line is definitely Do That Stuff.
Ooh.
Do That Stuff. That's
funky.
Like the baddest. Might be my favorite bass line actually ever. Yeah.
Funky, man.
Yeah.
Such great influences. I mean, really, that's encompassing so many different things at once, both of those players. I think that's great. Were you self-taught or did you take lessons?
I had a guitar teacher actually. So when I was playing guitar, I was taking lessons with the guitar teacher, and then when I switched to bass, I just kept taking lessons with him.
Oh, very cool.
So I didn't really have like a bass teacher. I just had like a music teacher, Dan Leonard, a guy, incredible guitar player from Northern Virginia, and he was like my life raft. I mean, this guy just like was way better than I deserved, in that moment, and helped me build a kind of infrastructure for thinking about bass in a musical way, and not in like a bass guy way. You know what I mean? Which I think we bump into a lot of bass players, I think, who, because there's only 4 strings and because you're generally only playing one note at a time, it's like really easy to look at the instrument kind of more like a drum in a certain way, which I think is a healthy thing in a lot of respects. And I still think about it in that way in a lot of respects, but a lot of bass players lack harmonic or even melodic knowledge and concept. And the fact that I was studying with a guitar teacher who's like a master of harmony and melody immediately kind of like put that on my plate versus just kind of attacking it from this kind of like one note at a time thing. I was kind of seeing the fretboard and the fingerboard in a wider way than I would have if I would have been maybe just taking from a normal bass teacher or something. So actually I had to kind of like go back and learn the fundamentals of bass. I had kind of like gone on, I was like kind of more interested in other things, and I wasn't really like a fundamentally good bass player. So I had to like kind of go back and put that in my pocket, which is interesting. I think it's kind of like the opposite of the way that most bass players learn.
Yeah. Well, you have an amazing pocket, by the way.
Thanks, man.
So
do you, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, man.
You know that.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I like to, I kind of look at it like playing the drums on the bass, but you get to incorporate melody. So it's perfect for me. I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if you think about the greatest bass players, there's always elements of melody and harmony in their playing beyond the rhythm part, which is fundamental. Like if I think about Paul McCartney or something, you really hear the chord progressions in his bass lines,
Yeah.
or you get the sense that it's a person who understands harmony and melody who happens to be holding a bass in that moment, rather than like a bass person, a
Right.
bass owner. You know what I mean?
Hello, my name is Josh Paul. I'm a bass owner.
Yeah, you know what I mean, though. I mean, I think it's a fascinating thing when you see like really heavy multi-instrumentalists, that it's like the music is in them and the instrument is kind of inconsequential. You know what I mean? It's like you hand them something and the music is like their music doesn't need the instrument. The instrument's just the vessel. And I mean, I even find that in people who don't even play music. There's some people who are just really funky people.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
they don't play. They've never played an instrument in their lives, but that if you handed them a drum or a bass or a trumpet or something, like, in a week, they would be doing things that other people wouldn't be able to do, just because they are funky as human beings, or they rock as human beings, or whatever that music isn't some shit that just like lives in a bubble or in a vacuum, that it's like it's a thing that's inside of people that you just kind of develop on an instrument. But yeah, I find that interesting.
Very, very interesting. By you saying that, I can tell that you approach bass playing musically, not just about chops or anything like that. And that obviously fuels your compositional skills.
I think that I think about bass playing as like a composer, rather than being a bass player who is like figuring out how to use that to compose. Like I think even before I was playing bass, even before I could play guitar, I was like writing shitty songs on guitar. Like before I knew what a chord was, I was writing really bad melodies or whatever. But the impulse was there from the beginning. So I think of myself as a composer before I think of myself as anything else.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I try to play that way, when I'm improvising bass lines, if I'm on stage playing, and, I'm trying to think about what I can play that kind of like creates contour in the context of whatever the music is in that moment, and that also creates kind of organization in a certain kind of way, trying to like play in an organized way that allows anchors to get kind of set into the stage so that people can play around those anchors and feel comfortable, that they won't feel comfortable that my boat is kind of leaving when they're trying to load something onto it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like, I'm constantly thinking about that. I would say that first and foremost, that's more what I am before I'm a player. I think I'm a composer, and then I just try to compose on whatever instrument I'm holding.
Okay. So you're definitely looking at big picture. You're looking at
Yeah.
musically. Yeah. Very
Yeah,
cool.
I believe very strongly that the band is the first audience member. You know what I mean? That there's no excuse for someone in the audience being aware of something going on stage that the band is not aware of, which happens often. Sometimes you play a gig with somebody and you can tell that musician is really only thinking about their part, or they're like not listening to what the singer's doing, or whatever, but the audience is aware of what the singer's doing. And for me, that's like not really acceptable. Do you know what I mean? That it's
I
our
do.
responsibility when we're on stage to be hearing the whole picture at once and tailoring what we're playing in that moment to that. Even if you're playing like the most in the box, like, handcuffed pop gig where you're not allowed to change a single note, I still think that there's a great deal of potential for interaction and improvisation within that. You might not be able to play any new notes or new rhythms, but the way in which you play the notes that you have to play changes based on the way the singer's singing, the sound of the room, the way the audience is reacting, the acoustic, all these kinds of things. I feel like we should be aware of as musicians on stage, like thinking like producers. I think about that often. Like when I'm playing bass, I think about, if I were a producer producing this music right now, what would I want the bassist to play? And then I try to play that.
Gotcha. That is some excellent advice. It's all about listening and vibing off one another.
100%. Yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. What was your first gig? What was your first like pro gig?
Wow. I don't know. I mean, I think my like, transition into real gigs was like kind of a slow one. Like I remember after my first year my high school band opened for like, Robbie Krieger from The Doors or something at Jack's nightclub, in Northern Virginia or whatever.
That's awesome.
So I don't know if that's a real gig, my shitty high school rock band.
That's a gig, man.
And then I did a tour after my first tour was after my first year of college. I did a tour with an American old time band, playing acoustic guitar with two violinists and what was the instrumentation actually? Was it just me and three string players maybe? The Who'da Thought It string band. We went to like Nova Scotia in a car and, slept on people's couches and but yeah, I mean, I think those were kind of like my first experiences in like the gigging world, but when I was in Dallas, I played a bunch of weird gigs. I played with a Frank Sinatra impersonator. I played at a strip club, I mean, I did all kinds of weird, I've played probably like 300 or 400 weddings and bar mitzvahs and, steakhouses, like, I mean, anything. Church gigs, so many church gigs. Yeah. I mean, just anything to survive,
I bet every single one of those has helped you, evolve and grow into what you're doing now, wouldn't you say?
Sure. Yeah, I
mean, even the strip club gig probably helped you where you are right this second. Even in minuscule way.
That's the one I go back to when I really. No, that was not. I didn't learn much on that gig. I learned. I'll tell you what I learned is that I don't want to play in VIPs of strip clubs anymore. That's what I learned on that gig.
I never knew they had live music at the strip clubs.
It was weird. It was like a jazz trio. It was a weird.
Wow.
A weird gig. Yeah, it was Dallas, man, Texas. It's a weird place.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, I think that you learn something on every gig, and in a certain moment, it becomes more valuable for you to take certain kinds of gigs versus other kinds of gigs. Like right now, I don't know that I would take a wedding gig because I feel like my time would be better spent practicing something or composing something. But when I was getting my stuff together as a, young bass player, man, absolutely. I mean, there's something to learn in every musical situation. I wouldn't poo-poo anything.
Nice. What do you practice now? What challenges you?
I'm learning some different instruments. So that's like when I have time to practice, I'm not really practicing bass.
Okay.
I'm practicing some other stuff. Like there's a Moroccan bass actually called Gimbri that I've been practicing for the last couple of years that I really love. It's like the great great grandfather of the bass. It's like a two-stringed bass with a third string. It's like a drone, a high drone.
Wow.
Really cool. Like wooden and camel skin and goat gut or sheep gut strings and really cool.
What is it called?
Beautiful. So, Gimbri or Sintir or Hashjuj, or there's different names for it depending on what region you're in, but it's normally they play it in North Africa and Algeria and Morocco.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love that instrument. It's got a really different technique, and it's like normally it's played in a context in which it's the only melodic instrument. It's
Really?
just like these metal castanets and that instrument and singing. So it's playing the groove, it's playing the bass line, it's playing percussion, and it's playing the melody. So
I am writing this down. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, Gimbri is probably the simplest way to look it up. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
But it's spelled like 1,000 different ways also. But yeah, I mean, it's played in Ganawa music, which is like mystical Sufi with African religious music. But it's it's trance music, Ganawa music. So the instrument, I think it has a lot to do with it's very connected still to what we do as bass players. I definitely recommend any bass player just at least check out the tradition because, and in a way, I mean, maybe it's controversial to say, but I think it's a richer tradition actually than the modern bass tradition. because
Okay.
because of the instrumentation. Um, it's very typical that on the verses it's playing like a groove, and then on the choruses it's playing the melody. And then while you're playing it with your first finger, you're also like beating the body with these three fingers. So you're playing drums at the same time. It's like it does everything. It's like the
All in
whole
one.
band.
All in
It's
one.
all in
That
one.
is, yeah.
And I think the closest thing you could compare it to is maybe like Larry Graham or something, like
Okay.
slap
Yeah.
bass playing melodies and stuff. But I love it because it's like illuminating a side of the bass that we don't always see, especially that I don't do, because normally myself as a bass player, I'm normally playing very simple, fundamental things and like as a part of a large ensemble. And to practice an instrument that's doing the opposite, that's playing as the only melodic instrument, playing all these different roles is really awesome and different for me. So it's inspiring.
Very cool, man. So you have this vast knowledge of sort of ethnomusicology. What got you into, this world music?
Yeah, I mean, I by no means would say that I have a vast knowledge of anything, nor would I put myself in the
Well,
ethnomusicological realm. My brother is actually a professor of ethnomusicology, so
oh,
I
okay.
would
Well, you're
I would
exposed to it
defer
and
to
you're
him.
curious about it. How
Yeah,
about that? Okay.
definitely, exactly, and that's maybe what I would say is I think the thing that I have is just curiosity.
Okay.
That I'm like really curious about the way that music works around the world, and whenever I have an opportunity to kind of take a deeper dive into it, I do that. And I think it's like learning languages, right? It's like if you speak one language, learning a second language is difficult, but if you speak two languages, learning a third language is less difficult. And if you speak seven languages, learning an eighth language is not difficult at all. It's like because you start making connections. And my brother is a polyglot, and it's incredible to watch him learn things so quickly. And but then it also just makes sense that I think as people who live in the US or the UK or Australia, like English native speakers, we put up a lot of barriers. And not only us, I mean, Italians or Spanish people do too, I mean, whoever it does, but you put up a lot of barriers and make a lot of excuses about why you can't do things, Oh, learn French, like why? I mean, I could never do that, you know what I mean, or whatever.
Yeah.
Or play this instrument. Oh no, I would never do that. But then if you just like treat it the way you would treat anything else, you just look at it as a process with steps, and you got to be curious, and you got to invest time and energy and passion, and you learn something today that you didn't know yesterday. It's not like a thing of like, I don't look at it as like I have to master these instruments so that people will think of me as a certain kind of thing, or I just like take lessons with people and then I do what they tell me. It's like not, you know what I mean? It's not really a complicated process, I think. But also if you're passionate, I'm very passionate about it. So I go to Turkey 4 or 5 times a year. I go to Morocco 4 or 5 times a year because I live in Spain. It's like a 2-hour flight to either place. So,
Okay.
so yeah, I would just say like, I try to treat those things as like, as just not thinking that there are any barriers, and just do the shit. Like just do the Nike slogan, just do it. Like, don't think about why you can't do it or why it'll be harder for you than someone else, or just do it, just take the lesson, do what the teacher tells you, and you'll be better than you were yesterday. I'll never be a master of any of those instruments that I'm studying ever in my life, but I'll know more about them than I knew a week ago, hopefully.
Hell yes. I love that, man. That's so cool. Let's see, what do you think? I don't know. Three keys to success in the music business.
Don't make success a goal would be the first one.
Okay.
I would say that if you take care of music, you have a good attitude, you treat people well, if you create a musician that people want to work with and be around, success will be a natural byproduct of that person, of that process. Whereas if you make success a goal, you might make decisions that don't have benefit, like that you might make decisions by which the music does not benefit, if I'm saying that correctly. I don't know how to say that. You know what I mean? Like you might make a decision that's like, oh, well, if I do this, then I'm more likely to be successful. But then you're like maybe doing that instead of making a decision that would benefit the music greatly, you know? And kind of, therefore, if you want to have success making music that you love, you're kind of like shooting yourself in the foot in that kind of way. I don't look at success as a goal.
Yeah, I suppose success is different for everyone. It's defined differently.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, exactly. I think maybe that's the first advice I would give of the three things would be define success for yourself. What is success? Is it being rich and famous in the music industry? Is it being able to, make a living doing what you love? Is it being a person that when you go on stage every night, the only thing that people want from you is for you to be yourself? I think you have to ask yourself those questions, because the answer to that question will create a different path for
Absolutely.
you. So for me, success is that I only have to play music that I want to play, and exclusively with people that I want to play with, and that I don't need a second job to do that. For me, that's success.
What more can you ask for?
Well, I mean, a lot, I guess. You could ask for a convertible, you could ask for a nice house and to be really famous and really rich. But I don't, if those things happen, which I don't think they ever will, they will only happen because I did the things that I wanted to do.
Okay.
And for me, those are the only terms by which I would be comfortable with that money.
So it's important because you recognize what those goals and points are and limits as well. So they're defined. So
yes, yeah, because it's very easy. I think, especially if you live in LA, you live in New York, you live in London, whatever. If you live in a major city where there's a lot of opportunity on a lot of different paths, and you don't have the stuff very clear in your mind, it's very easy to get kind of like corralled, and sent down a path that maybe, looking at it objectively, is not something that you want. Right. Maybe you really want to be a certain kind of musician, and you do one gig on the side, and someone hears you play and says, hey, I'm going to offer you this gig that pays you a lot of money with this huge artist, but it's music you hate, and you say, okay, I'll do one tour, and then you make a bunch of money and you buy a great house, and then you think, how am I going to pay for this house? I need to do another tour like that. And then you go to, and then 30 years later, you're the biggest, reggaeton bass player in the world or whatever, and you have all this money, but you never did the thing you wanted to do, unless you wanted to do that thing, which I would say, congratulations, great, but if you didn't, you might be unhappy. And I think the music business is littered with musicians like that you get 3 or 4 drinks in them and they tell you what they wish they would have been. And I don't want to be that musician. You know what I mean? I'd much rather live on the cheap and play music I want to play, and when I have 3 or 4 drinks, like, smile bigger.
I think I'm with you, man. I think I'm with you. Integrity. From your personal experience, what do you think are some other career opportunities for bass players that people may not think about? Because I know you do so many different things. Keep yourself busy and productive. There's always Starbucks, and there's always Lowe's or whatever, but something different than that.
Yeah. I mean, I think as bass players, it's in our nature to be supportive and to listen and to try to make other people sound good. And I think that quality is easily applicable to a lot of different avenues of the music industry. Whether that's being a music director or a producer or a sound engineer, or mixing engineer, or composer, or, even like, I started a record label and a publishing company, and because I wanted to help musicians who were great but didn't have a lot of traction,
Yeah.
Um, so I think all those things are options depending on how ambitious you are. I mean, starting a record label is very ambitious. Mixing a record is not as ambitious. You know what I mean? Or being a music director or something. But yeah, I think there's a lot of different things. I think you just have to look at what you like to do and see what's available according to that, because we're always going to do the things we love better than the things we don't love.
Right. Yeah. Good advice, man. Let's talk about gear.
Cool.
What are your go-tos?
Oh my God, what
Bass
department?
Bass department.
Vintage P basses. That's
Okay.
my
Favorite
number
year?
one. I have a 59. That's like my my baby. But I also love, like, I have a 60s Hofner that I love. I like weird old basses. I have an Ampeg baby bass.
Oh, cool.
And I like just unconventional bass. I have like a fretless acoustic guitar bass that a friend of mine made in Turkey that's like sounds like super crazy. I love playing baritone fretless guitar. I love playing oud. I love playing like gimbri, like weird bass sounds, just different sounds. I enjoy that a lot.
Very cool. Strings?
Jim Dunlop, MXR, baby. All day. Flat wounds.
Flats?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool. What about amps?
Mark bass. Yeah, I've been with Mark bass for forever, actually, since they were my first amp endorsement, and I love them. I've got a signature rig called the Casa, CASA.
Cool.
It's got like a very visible like gold grill on the head in the cabinets, and I love it because it's like super old school, but it can handle mini Moogs and octave pedals, and it's great.
Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, it's solid state, but it sounds like a tube, so it's incredibly light, very, very, very light. It comes in 410, 610, 810, and I think now they're even making a combo. It's awesome. I mean, it's like I'm not just saying that because it's mine. I love it. I mean, it's
Well, you actually play it, so that's a good sign.
I play it every gig. I mean, it's aside from like a vintage 60s SVT, it's my favorite sounding amp that I've ever heard. I mean, to be completely honest, like I've never heard an amp that sounds better than a 60s SVT, but that's the second best sounding amp I've heard. So, and I love working with them, and they're awesome. I also play, like when I play oud, I play the Mark acoustic amplifier, which is great for acoustic instruments. So, I love them, man. I couldn't, like, they're like a family, and I really love that about that company. It's beautiful.
Very cool. Any effects that you use on the reg?
My two main companies are MXR, Jim Dunlop MXR, most notably the vintage bass octave.
Yeah.
And the bass octave deluxe. Those are like the two octavers that I always have in my rig. And the carbon copy delay. Those are like my three main bass rig pedals. When I'm playing guitar, I also use other MXR pedals. And then also Earthquaker devices. I really love Earthquaker. Like, they're making, out of Ohio, they make a bunch of really weird shit that I love. So I use MXR for like the kind of like, more kind of consistent, know what you're gonna get, like, meat and potatoes stuff. And then I use Earthquaker for like in special weird moments,
Very cool. Very cool. Outside of music, what brings you joy, man?
I love to cook.
Do you?
I love.
What do you cook? What's your specialty?
Man, I mean, I live in Spain, so I've been trying to get into doing that. Like, Spanish cuisine is so deep, and so I've been messing around with that quite a bit. And but you know how it is, like, being from the US, it's like you instantly like start messing around with shit. You know what I mean? Like, I can't do anything authentically, I just like start, and then I'm like, it'd be cool if I throw mint into it or whatever, I don't know. But no, but I mean, I wasn't really ever good at it until the pandemic, and then I like was cooking twice a day for a year, so I started to get some chops together. Now it's like one of my favorite things to do.
I find it when I do cook. Fortunately, my wife loves to cook as well, and she's far better at it than I am.
Yeah.
But when I do, I feel that it takes my mind off everything else, and I just kind of like hone in on exactly what I'm doing at the moment. It feels really good afterwards. Hopefully it tastes good. Probably not all the time, but that's okay.
Yeah, but it doesn't even matter, actually.
Yeah.
I think, I think as many things as we can do to get away from thinking about 5 things at once is good, whether that's reading a book or going running or cooking or playing a gig or whatever. I feel like we put too much stuff on ourselves, and I feel like the last year a lot of people have noticed that it's like there's just too much unnecessary fluff that's like occupying our mind space, and social media makes it so much worse because you're like knowing about things that are completely irrelevant to you, and you're getting hit with so many things. Like you see a post about someone who got murdered, and then the next post is like a fluffy dog, and then something else is like a gig, and you're like, I don't need all of this information.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But because it all finds a home inside of you, and the apartment starts getting crowded. It's crazy. So I think as many things as we can do to kind of like focus on one thing and be present is good.
Hell yes, dude. Is there anything that you're doing or have done recently that you're most proud of musically that you want to share with people?
I just came out with my first solo album ever.
Amazing.
Round of applause. Thank you very much.
Good job, dude. Good job taking the time to do it, man.
Thank you. Yeah, it's called So Many Me. That came out on the 25th of June, so last month. And this year my set a goal to produce 12 records this year, which was maybe a little ambitious. So far I'm on schedule, but I'm a little sleep deprived, but it's all good. And I'll never do that again. but I guess it's cool to say you did it once. And I mean, Bocante, the band I'm on tour with right now, we're making our 3rd record now, and Snarky
Is that
Puppy's
your
about
band?
to make another one. Yeah,
Okay.
I have 2 bands. I have Snarky Puppy and Bocante.
Okay, very
And Snarky
cool.
Puppy's gonna make its 14th or 15th record this October. So a lot of stuff.
That is amazing. The
on.
longevity that you've been able to just attain is really impressive. Good job, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to that thing we were talking about earlier, just about having good people around you.
Yeah.
All it would take is one asshole to make me quit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there aren't any, so it's like, we keep going, we keep moving forward, and that's a cool thing.
It's so great, man. Well, dude, I really appreciate you doing this, taking the time. I know you're tired and busy. I think that the information and your approach to different things and advice is really going to inspire a lot of people. And I really appreciate you.
Thank you, John. Yeah, it's a pleasure, man. I'm a fan, so I appreciate you chatting with me.
Cheers to that. That's our show for today. Thank you for joining us. Stay healthy and kind. Spread love, good vibes, and inspiration. And remember, you got this. Follow your path and just play. I'm Josh Paul. Hope to see you out there sometime soon. And thank you again to Dunlop for making the show possible. And be sure to check out Bass Freaks wherever you get your podcasts. Cheers.